There's nothing here. Vladimiro stares out of the window, looking down on a poor excuse for his shantytown. This is Winter City? The other pale blonde child unbuckles and crawls over her brother to look. What do you mean? It's huge. Marita, please put your seatbelt back on, their butler babysitter says. I don't see any skyscrapers. The male twin shakes his head. I knew they were trying to get rid of us. Your guardians were doing nothing of the sort, Mr. Vasquez snaps. Marita, we are about to land, please. Remember what they said? Marita looks to her brother, rebelting as they descend. He had been able to negotiate the window seat, of which the designers of the private jet had somehow managed only one, which she regretted. It's a place that keeps to itself. Maybe this is part of that. Quite, Vasquez says. The Season Islands maintain a low profile at all levels, including architectural. Vladimiro's eyes drift to the help. Stop talking, he said. Mr. Vasquez nods. He is not going to test the children with verbal confrontation right now. Truth be told, he was scared to anger them. The airport was far from their destination, and it would be a long drive even without the two brats enraged. It's a big city, she says, 1 million people. Vladimiro laughs. Okay, Marita replies, it's not Mexico City, but it's smaller than Condesa, Vladimiro says, annoyed. This trip, which would not be a short visit by any measure, had been a joke, and the twins were the punchline. It's an outpost, a backwater. We're not here for the culture. Marita grins the devil. I can feel it, can't you? Vasquez shifts. He certainly can, from practice, and it disturbs him. A smile creeps over Vladimiro's lips. Oh. Right? Marita pauses. It's immense. The plane shakes as they hit the runway, surprising the butler, who jumps. When he looks back, the two are acting like normal kids in a toy store. They were, however, budding necromancers, analyzing Winter City's capacity for dark magic. The chaperone refrains from shuddering. Wow, Vladimiro says, and can't say anything else. Wow. After what little customs the insanely wealthy are required to go through, they walk through the airport lounge and into the car. Marita is introspective, analyzing what she feels, while Vladimiro's grin would seem permanent. It was the dirt itself. Mexico City, although gigantic, was not itself built on special land. The history of Aztec necromancy, followed by the tail end of the Inquisition experiments as carried out in New Spain, gave it a storied history, to be sure, but the soil was nothing abnormal. Here, even on Winter Island, not the most potent landmass in the archipelago of the seasons by any means, one trained in the dark arts would know immediately that the legends surrounding the place were true, that the land was ripe. Things were such that, given the slightest prodding, the dead would claw their way out of it, and the twins had been trained well. Vasquez swallowed as he buckled up and put the hired car into drive, starting their journey into town. We will take country roads, Vladimiro said firmly. I wish to see the countryside, not a freeway. After a brief pause, during which he saw no harm in the request, Vasquez reset the directions in the car's GPS. What was the story with the name again? Marita asked. The butler was not going to speak until spoken to, but prepared his answer as he took the appropriate exit. It's hotter than I thought it would be, she added. Aren't we in Alaska? Vladimiro turned to her. Didn't you read the briefing? That's right, Marita said. They don't like it when you say that. Her brother nodded. But yes, we're in Alaska. It's the low profile, like you said. The Season Islands are like their own state, but if they called them that, it would make them better known, she said. Vladimiro nodded, then tapped her on the leg, making eye contact. She shook her head, and he stared, annoyed. She sighed. Vasquez, she said, turning to the butler, please pull over. I need to pee. Miss Tahayo, the help responded, not wishing to stop in this objectively spooky forest. We are 20 minutes from... I don't want to lecture, Marita said. Do as I say. After a brief pause, in which he considered which battles he wished to fight, Vasquez pulled over onto the wide shoulder. Please, he said, be quick. It would be best if we were not late to meet Mr. Dandridge. After the door closed and Marita had wandered into the bushes, Vladimiro started fumbling with his smaller bag, looking for something. He said, then continued. Is there a problem? Vasquez asked eventually, looking into the back seat. I need to look in the trunk, Vladimiro answered, for a book. Again, not wishing to anger the testier of the two, Vaquez held back a sigh and opened his door. Can I look instead? The boy paused. Yes, it's in a small red bag in the large duffel. Marita was still in the bushes, but the servant wasn't going to look for her yet. He would pretend he wasn't worried. Vaquez quieted his concern by dedicating himself to finding Vladimiro's red bag. But he came up empty-handed. I am sorry, sir, he yelled after a good 2 minutes perusal. I cannot find it. The butler turned to the bushes. Marita, he said loudly, is everything all right? It's in the other bag, the black duffel, Vladimiro said, suddenly next to him. Vaquez flinched. Very well, Vaquez said, and opened the smaller bag. He saw the small red sack, but it obviously didn't contain a book. There it is, Vladimiro said, and grabbed it. Vaquez noticed that the child was covered in sweat and couldn't help but stare. Sir, the butler said, I must inquire. A stick, fairly large, slammed into Vaquez's shin. Fuck, he said, uncharacteristically. The butler turned to see his attacker, Marita. Get in the car, he bellowed. Your guardians will... But he slipped into silence just after he felt something very, very hot briefly touch his ungloved hand. Mouth open, Vaquez crumpled to the ground. What took so long? Marita asked, angry. Vladimiro turned. I left it in one of my bags, he said, putting their deadly trinket back in the red bag. Marita crossed her arms. Do you have the engraver, then? He nodded. Don't start that with me, the boy said. We've never killed someone before. Marita stared, noting his sweat. She nodded. Well, get it and let's do it. She turned to the road, empty as they'd hoped, but with the potential for anyone to pass at any moment. And let's get him in the car. Just after they finished dragging Vaquez's corpse into the back seat, truck after truck sped by. They had gotten lucky, but they needed to hurry up. The complication of someone curious stopping to help might devastate their plan. Vlad, although he had been practicing on any surface he could for weeks, had shaky hands as he etched the runes into the body. It was taking forever. Night fell before they had finished, and the last quarter of the rune system was done by flashlight. Breathless, they looked to each other. Okay, your turn, Vladimiro said, and Marita didn't argue. Vaquez had shit himself, and neither of them wanted to clean it up. Vlad was covered in blood of various colors, which they would cover up with the change of his clothes. The back seat of the black sedan smelled unholy, and they couldn't wait to get moving again. Marita pulled the ceramic knife out of her own red sack. She breathed in and, without much else for a pause, slit her wrist. Vlad recoiled in horror, but quickly recovered and guided her bleeding arm over the runes. They had smuggled the Death Stone, charged over years with their own magic, onto the plane. Traveling with such a thing was against just about any regulation imaginable, and had been difficult to engineer. Actually bringing an activator, something to make the runes function, would have been an additional headache, so they used one that they both possessed at this point in life, virgin blood. And soon enough, although Marita was feeling lightheaded, the runes activated. The first order of business was to cauterize the wound. The second, rise, Vlad said, and Marita got out of the way. The undead butler hit his head on the roof of the car, but instead of retreating back down, he just hovered there, pushing against the ceiling of the sedan. Go outside and clean yourself, was Vlad's next command. The twins watched as their creation did it as it was told. We did it, Marita said weakly. Vladimiro nodded, then turned to her and clasped her hand. We're free. The house was gigantic, just huge. It was Victorian. Had white people even lived on Winter Island during the Victorian age? Clark was pondering this when, as if to kill his curiosity, the door opened. Detective Clark, a man in the uniform yelled, as softly as possible. Yeah, the detective said. The servant motioned him in. Come, he said, as Clark approached. After the door shut behind him, the detective's eyes had to adjust. The place was lit, but the lights were very, very low. Where is Mr. Dandridge? Clark asked. Mr. Dandridge suffers from a rare disease and does not take visitors, the butler said. I will speak for him. Right, the detective said. Then let's get down to business. The butler moved to a table and Clark sat down. Before the servant had settled, the detective decided more visibility was necessary. I'm sorry, Clark said, but I need you to turn the lights up. Of course, the servant said. We keep them low for Mr. Dandridge, but he is not here right now, obviously. If you will give me a second, and he left the room. This place was creepy as fuck, but that wasn't a surprise. In this city, bright colors and smiles meant something was seriously wrong. This was more your average environment. Clock looked around, weird old portraits on the wall and everything. The lights went out, and Clock had the thought that he'd made a mistake taking this job. After a few seconds, however, they turned back on. He shielded his eyes while they adjusted again. The butler sat down before the detective knew he was in the room. "Mr. Clock," the servant said, "we have had an unfortunate disappearance. 2 children." "I'm sorry to hear that," Clock said. "You want me to find them?" The butler paused. "Yes, now these children are not what you would call..." Clock waited. "We have been told that you do not shy away from certain types of cases," the butler said, question implied. "Yeah," Clock said, "I'm not afraid of the undead, if that's what you mean." "Quite," the man said. "These children are highly trained in the dark arts." The detective stared. "You're going to have to tell me what school they belong to." "Not a problem. They come from Spanish lineage. Their bloodline has been in Mexico for hundreds of years now." "Mexico City?" Clock asked. The servant nodded. "I believe so." Clock paused. "Okay, and they were kidnapped?" The butler's sudden exasperation told the detective this was not the case. "Okay, so what are we looking at here?" "At that location, we found treads that matched the car their manservant had been driving them in, and lots of his blood." Clock squinted. "And the footprints of the 2 children and their servant." "Did you find anything else?" Clock asked. The butler pulled a file folder from the chair next to him. "We needed to destroy the scene before the police arrived, of course, but we took as many pictures and notes as possible before we did so." He slid the folder towards Clock. "Here they are." "Who is we?" the detective asked. The butler stared. "I'm sorry?" Clock leafed through the folder. If this wasn't the cops that took this evidence, it was an ex-cop. He looked up. Someone was too scared to take the rest of the case then? "I can't speak for our staff," the butler said. "So Mr. Dandridge has detectives as staff?" The butler stuttered, exposed. "Look, I don't need to know who I'm working for," Clock said, "and if it's a dangerous case, that doesn't mean I won't take it." The detective paused. "But I'm not going into a hot one blind. You're going to have to give me more than just some headshots," Clock said, holding up 2 pictures of the twins. "And I need to talk to your investigators." "Absolutely not," the butler said. Clock stood. "Then I'm sorry." The servant stared. "You will speak to no one of this?" "If I had a habit of doing that," the detective said, "I'd be dead." He walked towards the door. "Call me when your employer changes their mind," Clock said. As he was leaving the mansion, the door closed. And there, in the mansion driveway, was something the detective had convinced himself didn't exist. He stared for a few seconds, then dealt with this the way he usually dealt with surprises. Without looking, he pulled a flask out of his pocket and took a swig. "I need you to tell me about Mr. Murder," the man with the book said. Clock reached for a cigarette and lit up. "Come on, Clock." "Oh, so you know my name now," the detective said. "Who the fuck are you supposed to be again?" "Just tell me about Mr. Murder," the man in the robe said, the bandages on his face moving slightly in the aggressive breeze. "What is he exactly?" "What happened to your face?" Clock asked the hallucination. The man with the book wasn't amused. "This is important, and I know you did a lot of research on him." "What's it to you?" Clock asked. "You're not even real, right?" The detective could feel the look he was getting from under the bandages. "Fuck off." The man in the robe sighed. Behind them, the door to the mansion opened and Clock turned. It was the butler. "Yeah?" the detective asked. "My employer has agreed to your terms," the servant said, "if you are still interested in the job." "That was fast," Clock said with a slight smile. Then the butler looked in back at the detective and seemed confused. "Can I help you, sir? This is a private residence. How did you get in?" Clock turned back to the bandage man, then looked to the butler. "I'm sorry, you can see him?" "I need you to talk to me," the man with the book said. "Things have gotten pretty out of hand." The detective turned back to the robed man, disbelieving. "How did you disappear in the hallway? And what's in the book?" "I think you should both leave," the butler said, and pointed to the driveway and the gate, "and work this out somewhere else." "Wait," Clock said, turning back to the mansion entrance. "What about the job?" The butler stared. "Both of you have to leave," he said, as if he couldn't be bothered to make sense of the situation. "Now." "What kind of creature is he?" the man with the book asked. "Can he be killed?" Clock turned with venom. "What the fuck are you talking about?" Mr. Murder, the robe man said. If you don't leave right now, the butler said to the two of them, we will loose the hounds. God damn it, Clock said, looking to the man with the book as he walked to his car. Thanks, asshole. The bandaged man's gaze followed Clock's figure as he walked. Clock couldn't see his eyes, but his head was pivoting. Right, the detective said, not sure what the fuck was happening. He got in the car, and when he looked back, all he saw was a very confused butler. The man with the book must have disappeared again. Amazing. Clock drove through the gate and was back on the road to Winter City, which was about a half hour away. He had been nailing down a case. He had literally been making the deal to get things moving, and then whatever that had been happened. Now Clock didn't know how the fuck he was going to make rent. This Mr. Murder thing had been an interesting case, but the detective hadn't seen any yellow-eyed crows lately. Maybe the necromancer was on vacation. He looked in the left side view mirror and started to merge. Clock, he heard, and when the detective looked to his right, shit, Clock said. He was in the car. The man with the book was in the fucking passenger seat. Clock's body hit fight or flight. His first instinct was to pull his gun, so, in his shock, he reached for his ankle holster, forgetting that this action wasn't going to work while he was driving, let alone switching lanes. Instead, the front of the car and back of him slammed into the side of the sedan, and everything turned into a very jagged, very crunchy washing machine. The car rolled over and over, and over, until it was sitting in a ditch, with the engine smoking and Clock dead inside, held up by his seatbelt. Cars stopped and people got out to help, but they were confused. There was a man standing next to the car in a large hooded robe, his face covered in bandages. Fuck, the man with the book said. That's not good. On the other side of town, two children sat under a bridge. I'm hungry, Vlad. Marita stared at her brother. I still don't understand why we can't have him go to the store. Because, Vladimiro said, he'd show up on security footage and they'd know where we are. She looked down. I don't know how much more we can bleed ourselves without eating. Marita looked up to her brother, right? If we need it, Vlad said, and turned to her, we can use mine. He reached in and hugged his sister, there under the bridge. Hot days had turned to cold nights, and they needed all the warmth they could get. And you're sure it'll work, Marita asked. The ritual? Vlad pulled back. I thought you were 100% on it. I am, Marita said, but you checked my work. It looked good to me, Vlad said firmly, and I mean, what other option is there? And she had to agree. Their convent in Mexico City probably wouldn't take the two of them back. They seemed all too happy to be transferring the twins to the school here. And after doing what they'd done since arriving, she was certain that no other institution would take them. No one cared about the Tahayo twins. They were being sharpened as weapons, and now that they were clearly weapons unable to be controlled, she was sure they had no use at all to the people that had been investing in them. At 10 years old, they were without anyone but each other. Marita started crying, and Vladimiro comforted her. When she looked up, she saw the pawn, their dead butler, and had an idea. Look, she said, we're by wilderness. She pointed to the grasslands nearby. Can't we get him to hunt for animals or something? Vlad stared at the ground. I don't think we have that kind of control with this one. Then he looked up. I'll go hunt. You know what, Marita said? We should get used to being hungry anyway. Vlad stood up. No, really, I'm sure there are rabbits around here. And how do we cook one? It's okay, Marita sighed. Their plan wasn't working out. Nothing was working out. She picked up a stick and began to draw in the dirt.